can take our seats. Shabbat Shalom. So, this week, the Torah portion is Chayei, and there's a lot that happens, but one of the things that I've been thinking about throughout the week is some of the folks in the Parsha that we hear a little bit about, but we don't really focus on. We often focus on Abraham and Sarah and Yitzchak and Rivka and the sort of main characters, the main members of the family. But there are other folks in the Parsha who sort of take a back seat or a supporting role, and we don't often take the time to think about them or mention them or sort of study the role that they play in the Parsha, but they're there, and it's worth giving them a little bit of consideration. So this week, one of the sort of supporting cast members who comes a little bit into the main plot of the family drama is Abraham's servant, Eliezer. If you remember your Torah studies and your Torah stories, then you might remember that Eliezer is the one that Abraham sends to go find a wife for Isaac when the time comes. He sends him to go, because Abraham's getting pretty old by then. He's not really traveling so much anymore, so he sends his servant Eliezer, and Eliezer comes up with a whole set of circumstances and qualifications to help make sure that he finds a good wife for Isaac, and he ends up finding Rebecca, and the rest is history. But it's an important sort of role that he plays in this, but it's not the only role that he plays in Abraham's life, and he's been running Abraham's household all these years, and he isn't mentioned by name, but there are lots of places where it talks about Abraham's servant and the head of his household, and the Midrash always connects all of these mentions back to Eliezer, that he sort of plays this really central role in Abraham's household. There's a point at which, before Isaac is born, there's even a point at which Eliezer is the designated heir of Abraham's household, because Abraham doesn't have children at the time. And there's a conversation that Abraham has with God where God comes to Abraham and says, don't worry, everything's going to be great. I'm going to make a great nation from your descendants. And Abraham says, what descendants? I don't have any descendants. Right now, the heir of my household is Eliezer, my servant. And God says, oh, don't worry, we're going to sort that out. And that does happen. And so Eliezer's role in the household also has sort of shifted over time, that for a while he wasn't just the running the household, but he was actually the heir. And so it's sort of remarkable, if we think about it, that Eliezer is willing to not only to go and find Isaac a wife, but to really be serious and intentional and thoughtful about it, and to really make sure that he finds a good wife for Isaac, because we could imagine that he might have hard feelings about it, that if he was for a while the designated heir, and then very late in life, very late in the situation, Abraham has children, in a way he's been displaced, or he may have sort of had hopes of inheriting that have been now disappointed. And so his loyalty to Abraham and the household, and perhaps even to Abraham's faith and to God, is really sort of remarkable under those circumstances. And The Midrash even says, there's even a Midrash that says that Eliezer had hoped that his daughter would marry Isaac. So that, like, if he wasn't going to inherit, maybe still his family could still be a part of the future of this family. But then Abraham sends him to go find a wife. So he has all of these reasons to not to be loyal or to be bitter, and yet he's incredibly loyal to Abraham. There's elsewhere where he even goes off to war with Abraham to help rescue Lot, who's been captured in this war between all these different kings. And so he's really not only shows up for Abraham in doing this really important task of finding Isaac a wife, but he even puts his life on the line for Abraham and his family. And it's sort of interesting that we have this example, this really strong example of loyalty here in this parsha not from one of the central characters, but from one of these sort of supporting cast members. And we talked a few weeks ago about Hagar and how some of the lessons of the stories surrounding her come through her, and that she models some of the important things that we need to learn, and we wouldn't necessarily expect to have those lessons come through the Egyptian handmaiden. Here, Eliezer, who's from Damascus, is also sort of teaching us about this sort of loyalty, this idea of being so committed to a person, a family, a faith, that you're even willing to put it ahead of your own best interests sometimes. And that the Torah isn't using one of the main family members to teach us this lesson, but is using Eliezer to model this for us. And there are lots of things that we could sort of extrapolate from this idea of loyalty. And it was interesting, I was listening to some podcasts and reading some commentaries, and sometimes it takes this in a direction of sort of blind faith and loyalty, which isn't always necessarily the most comfortable place for us to go. But I started to wonder, as I was thinking about it, what it would mean or what it would feel like to have that kind of commitment today to the communities that we're a part of. What would it mean to show up for the community where we put the community's interests ahead of our own? And I wonder how many people really feel that way about their communities. I think people feel that way about their families sometime, or about their children or their partners. That sort of, like, if I said to you, who are the people, or what are the things that you would put your own safety at risk for, or that you would put your own self-interest, on the back burner for, right? I think most people would say family. But I don't know that a lot of people would say community. And I wonder about that. And I wonder how our communities would be different if people did prioritize them in a different way. If we took even like a little bit of that kind of loyalty, I'm not necessarily saying we should all go out and die for the things, but that I think sometimes we come with a focus on what we need and what we want to get out of a community or out of a relationship. And we don't always think about what we can give back, or what the community might need from us. So I think it's a beautiful sort of opportunity, invitation that Eliezer presents for us. to sort of take stock. What are the things in our life that are important enough to us that we would put them ahead of our own interests, our own, maybe even our own, our own interests. And if we have a hard time thinking of what those things are, if we're not sure that there are those things in our life, is that something to consider? Are we comfortable with that, or does that mean that there's something deeper maybe to be examined? So I'll leave you with that invitation for this Shabbat, and hope that that each of us might find one community, one value, one idea that we are really willing to commit to be loyal to show up for, even when maybe it's not so convenient for us.